What's up guys, Asian here again, and today the NDA has been lifted on some Necromancer stuff. So now the class reps, as well as anybody who was at the London playtest, so this is the media and certain players, are now able to share any information that they happen to have concerning the Necromancer. So I took a look through the people who do have sort of content that was released as of today, and I decided to use this website just because it seems to have probably at the very least the most complete information, as well as it's in a way that is easily digestible, at least for me. So I will have a link down in the description below to a couple of videos concerning the Necromancer, its skill lines, things like that. So be sure to check those out if you prefer a more video format, as well as information from somebody who has actually played either at the London playtest or is a class rep. But without further ado, let's go ahead and get started here with all the different abilities. I do not actually know what all these do, so this is the first time I'm looking at them, and I will give you guys a little bit of kind of my opinion as to where these abilities fall, whether they're quote good or not. So we're going to start off with the Gravelord line. So this has kind of been described as your kind of damage, quote unquote, skill tree. So the ultimate is called Frozen Colossus. So the base one unleashes a frostbitten flesh colossus to pulverize enemies in the area. The colossus smashes the ground 3 times, dealing frost damage to each smash. Each smash applies major vulnerability to any hit for 3 seconds, increasing the damage taken by 30%. Okay. So it's an instant, it's a ground, it has a 28-meter range, 8-meter radius, it lasts for 2 seconds, and it costs 150 ultimate. Pestilent Colossus deals disease damage now, and it deals more damage with each smash. And Glacial Colossus still smashes 3 times. The final smash stuns all enemies hit for 3 seconds. Wow. So they have decided to include major vulnerability. That alone, this major vulnerability alone, might actually make Necromancers worth running in a trial group. Because as far as I know, this is the only source of major vulnerability in the game right now. And increasing damage taken by 30%, that's pretty substantial. Now, the 3 seconds obviously is pretty short, so this might change. So again, these may or may not change over the course of the Elsweyr PTS, but just the fact that they've introduced major vulnerability as a debuff for players is kind of interesting here. So now for the active abilities, Flame Skull, lob an explosive skull on the enemy, dealing flame damage. Every third cast its ability deals 20% increased damage, so sounds just basically like Veteran Infection, but instead of a dot, it's a direct damage ability. Venom Skull, this sounds like a... so this just converts it into stamina ability and deals poison damage. Casting any Necromancer ability counts towards the 3rd cast. The Ricochet Skull, every 3rd cast this ability deals 20% increased damage and will bounce up to 2 times to other nearby enemies. So this basically adds a little bit of cleave. This is the Stamina Morph instead. So just like your pretty much basic spamble here. Again, it looks like basically a spamble version of Veteran Infection from the Warden skill line. Blast Bones, summon a flaming skeleton from the ground after 2.5 seconds. The skeleton runs after the target and explodes when it gets close to them. I don't think this is part of the description, but dealing flame damage to all enemies nearby creates a corpse on death. The ability is also a criminal act, so I'm guessing if you use this in a city, you'll get accosted by guards. It looks like it is a base stamina cost here. So Blighted Blast Bones, it now deals disease damage and applies measure to file. So this sounds like it might be pretty nasty for PvP. And then Stalking Blast Bones, every second this skeleton spends chasing its targets increases the damage of the explosion by 10% up to a maximum of 70% more damage. So this sounds like it might be better for range DPS. I'm not sure if this stamina is supposed to be stamina or magicka. I'm assuming that everything on this site is accurate. So if this is a stamina, then it doesn't seem like this is going to be used for magicka DPS, because it doesn't seem like there's a magicka morph at all. But this does say it converts to a stamina ability, so I'm assuming that this actually costs magicka initially. So Stalking Blast Bones, this is probably going to be the morph you're going to choose for magicka DPS, and it's probably going to encourage you to stay farther away as much as you can in order to get the extra damage here. Boneyard desecrates the ground at a target location, dealing a certain amount of frost damage over 10 seconds. Consumes a corpse on cast, deals 20% more damage. Any ally standing in the graveyard can activate the Grave Robber synergy, dealing frost damage to enemies in the area. and healing you for the damage done. I don't know if you refers to the ally or to you, the Necromancer. Unnerving Boneyard now applies major breach and fracture to enemies within. An avid Boneyard, you and your ally standing in the graveyard can activate the synergy. So now it seems like you can activate your own synergy. So that seems to be pretty interesting. It might be useful to have this ability like on a tank, because now you can just activate your own Alkosh. So that seems pretty interesting. Interesting there. So it does seem like you need to consume a corpse on a cast. So it looks like if you're going to use Boneyard, you're going to need to use Blast Bones or have a dead enemy nearby in order to use Boneyard itself. I don't know what the deal 20% more damage is. This might be a typo, or it might be if you consume a corpse, then it deals 20% more damage. Otherwise, it doesn't. But just from the wording, it sounds like the corpse itself is a requirement in order to cast this ability. So it does seem like you will need to use Blast Bones and then use Boneyard here. The Unnerving Boneyard applying major breach and major fracture. This basically sounds like the Warden's Shulk before it was changed into its current form. The old form of Shulks, both morphs applied major breach and major fracture. So I don't know why they would make this morph if they changed that morph on Wardens in the past. So I guess we'll see whether or not this is changed or not. Of course, the downside is running Boneyard is, again, that corpse. If it is a mandatory requirement of this ability, then I guess that's a good balancing act there. Skeletal Mage, an Earth Skeletal Mage from the dirt to fight by your side for 16 seconds. The mage attacks the closest enemy every 2 seconds, dealing shock damage. This creates a corpse on death. Skeletal Archer, looks like this is just a typical stamina conversion. Deals physical damage, and the Archer will deal more damage to each attack. Exploding Mage, if the mage lasts its full duration, then it explodes and deals shocking damage to enemies around it. So this is... a lot of these abilities look like they're going to be really nice for bow builds, especially the Skeletal Archer. Plus, it seems like each attack does 10% more damage, so I guess it depends on how much damage it does per attack. So this sounds like it could ramp up to be a pretty strong ability, but if it's a very weak ability like Shades, like it only deals like a few hundred damage with each tick, then it's probably not going to be all that useful. And then Shocking Siphon, so it seems like he didn't manage to get the morphs, so let's see if Alcast has something on his website. He might. Go ahead and see. So these are all templates. So it doesn't look like Alcast has anything up right just yet. But Shocking Siphon violently drained the last spark of life from a corpse, dealing shock damage over 12 seconds between you and the corpse. So that's interesting. I'm not sure exactly what this means. Again, I might have to check out the videos to kind of see how this ability is being working. And again, this guy forgot the morph. Now these are the passive abilities for the same skill tree. Reusable parts: when an enemy dies in 4 seconds of being damaged by one of your Necromancer abilities, your next Blast Bones, Skeletal Mage, or Spirit Mender cast is free. Looks like this might be very nice for sustain in Trash Pulse. Death Knell increases your critical strike chance against enemies under 25% health by 10% for each Gravelord ability slotted. Holy crap, this basically gives you a massive boost in execute damage. You could probably get 100% crit strike chance as a stamina Necromancer, so this is... I see this being potentially reworked in the future. Dismember: while Gravelord ability is active, your spell and physical penetration is increased by 1500. Oh boy. While the ability is active, so this would probably count for Boneyard. This is over 10 seconds. Skeletal Mage. This might count. I'm not sure if this will count while it is up or not. It definitely will not count for Flame Skull because it's inactive. It's a spammable. Doesn't have a dot associated with it. But Boneyard, Skeletal Mage, definitely Shocking Siphon, and maybe Blast Bones will count. So there's a pretty good chance that you will have Dismember up, so you have that additional penetration. And Rapid Rot increases your damage done with damage over time effects by 10%. So this seems like it just is a nice, just flat increase to damage over time abilities. So this would also affect things like Endless Hail, Blockade. Just from the wording, it might just be Gravelord abilities, but from the wording, it does seem like it will boost all dot damage. Pretty strong. Moving on to Bone Tyrant. So this is kind of been marketed as the tanking skill line. So Bone Goliath transformation, you become a horrific Bone Goliath, increasing your max health by 30,000 for 20 seconds and immediately restoring 30,000 health while transformed. Your light attacks restore 2640 health and your fully charged heavy attacks restore 5280 health. It costs 300 ultimate to use, so 100 more ultimate than Magma Shell, and you still don't get invulnerability, but you do get some nice heals. And this sounds pretty interesting. Pummeling Goliath. While transforming, your bash attack can hit multiple targets in front of you and deal physical damage. And Ravenous Goliath. While transformed, you deal 5, I guess it should be a percent, 5% of your max health and damage to nearby enemies every second, and heal for that amount. So this seems like this is going to be the morph you're going to want to choose as a tank, because it does scale off of your max health. So if you have like, and you also gain the additional 30,000 max health as well. So if you are already sitting at about 40,000 health, you have 70,000 health. 5% of that would be 3,500. So you heal 3,500 plus you would damage that amount every second. So this would probably be a nice morph to use for tanks. I'm not sure if I feel like this is going to be better than Magma Shell, but at the very least you get basically almost double your health, and with this you do get that 5% heal every second. So this might end up being about as strong as Magma Shell, but right now it seems like Magma Shell is going to be stronger, mainly because it costs less, and it basically reduces damage to only 3% of your max health. So I don't know how this will stand compared to Magma Shell. Active abilities: Death Scythe. Slicing your enemy's life force, dealing magic damage. You heal for 25% of your maximum health for the first enemy hit, and additional 3% for each additional enemy hit, up to 5 additional enemies. So heal for 25% of your max health for your first enemy hit. So this sounds like might be your like burst heal on a Necromancer, because it just heals for 25% of your max health immediately. Enemies damaged by you receive 2,000 heal absorption for 2 seconds, negating healing they receive. So this is going to be more for PvP. It also converts to a stamina ability. Swift Scythe. After dealing damage, you heal for additional 10% of your max health over 5 seconds. So basically sort of like a polar wind kind of effect here. So yeah, Death Scythe seems to be your kind of burst heal as a Necromancer tank, or even as just a Necromancer in general. Bone Armor. Wrap yourself in hardened bone, granting you major resolve and major ward, increasing your physical resistance, spell resistance by 50 to 80, so typical major ward, major resolve class ability. Increase a corpse when the effect completes. While active, enemies that strike you with range attacks will be pulled towards you once every 3 seconds. So it looks like this is basically going to be a Swarm Mother's just as an active ability. This is going to be pretty cool. Beneficent Armor. While active, reduce the cost of Skeletal Bomber, Skeletal Mage, and Skeletal Mender by 12%. So this seems like so it reduces the cost of your Necromancer summon abilities. This might see some use on DPS, might see some use in healers as well. But oh god, the Beckoning Armor, this is just hilarious. They put Swarm Mother, the Monster Helm set, as an active ability. So it looks like Necromancer tanks, you guys are going to have a pretty easy time pulling things in. You just have to use this ability and just let them hit you. But it seems like it only activates once every 3 seconds, so I don't know if it's like one enemy every 3 seconds or not. So you still might need to use something like Silver Leash or something in order to pull in everybody else while you're waiting for your Beckoning Armor to reproc itself. Curing Cadaver, sapling your life from fresh corpses, healing you for 2970 health and additional 75% health per additional corpse. So this seems like a repentance for you. So each corpse, the mortuary mending, each corpse you consume grants you major protection for 1 second. And then curative boon, each corpse you consume gives you 5 ultimate. So obviously you would want to go with curative boon for the additional ultimate. So this looks basically like a rehash of the Templar repentance, or I don't know what the base. Yeah, it's just repentance. That being said, though, we'll have to see whether this move and repentance can be used on the same corpse. Multiple Templars can use repentance on the same time on the same corpse, so I'm assuming that you'll be able to use Curing Cadaver or its morphs along with repentance from like a Stamplar or a other sort of Templar. Bone Totem. You place a totem of bone at your feet that gives minor protection to you and your allies for 8 seconds. After 2 seconds, the totem instills fear on enemies, holding them in place for 4 seconds. So this looks like a hard CC with a little bit of a delay, plus some minor protection as well. Lasts for 8 seconds. Remote Totem. Now the totem can be summoned up to 28 meters away. And then Agony Totem. Allies can activate Pure Agony, causing enemies to take magic damage over 5 seconds and applying minor vulnerability to them for the duration, increasing their damage taken by 8%. So this seems like a pretty useful synergy. I guess we'll have to see how it scales and stuff. It also applies minor vulnerability, which is also really great. So with this, I wouldn't say that IA is going to be completely removed, but it might be that IA might be removed combined with like the shock glyph and this particular synergy. You might be able to get very good amount of vulnerability uptime. I guess it will remain to be seen whether this is going to be useful or not. Of course, this is going to be used obviously by a tank or a healer. I'm going to say it's going to be more likely that it's going to be used on a healer, like a Necromancer healer. You're going to place this, I guess this will probably be placed at your feet, so you have to be next to the tank. So yeah, you'd have to be in group, you'd have to place it in the group, and hopefully the tank will be able to activate it for Alkosh, maybe the off tank will be able to activate it for Alkosh. Just thinking off the top of my head, that might be how Bone Totem is going to be used here. And then Grave Grasp summons 3 patches of skeletal claws from the ground in front of you, snaring your enemies by 50% for 5 seconds and inflicting minor maim for 5 seconds. Empowering Grasp, hitting you or allies, grant them Empower for 56 seconds. Hopefully this is a typo. It should be 5. I guess it should be 5 seconds or something. Increasing the effect of their light attack by 40%. Hitting your skeletal. Sorry. Yes, hitting your skeletal mage or spirit mender enchants them for 5 seconds, increasing their effectiveness by 40%. And then Clutching Grasp, each patch can immobilize one enemy for 4 seconds. So this one looks like a better ability for hard CC compared to the totem, because this totem does have a 2-second duration. And I'm guessing, since it says Instills Fear, any enemy that's immune to fear won't be able to be affected. Grave Grasp, it might not be able to affect similar enemies. So if you're typically speaking, if the enemy is immune to fear, they're also immune to any hard CC. So this might not matter for at all which one you choose. But at the very least, this one's going to be immediate versus Totem, which is over 2 seconds. Now for your passives, Death Gleaming, with the Bone Tyrant ability slotted, whenever an enemy you are in combat with dies within 28 meters, you restore 100 magic and stamina. Looks like it'll be very nice for trash pulls or bosses with ads that get summoned, but other than that, it's probably not very useful for like single bosses. Sustain Harm, reduce the damage you take from damage over time abilities by 10% while you have a Bone Tyrant ability active. Health Avarice, increases your healing received by 2% for each Bone Tyrant ability slotted. Last Gasp, increase your max health by 2,000, so they just basically added an additional racial passive to Necromancers. Oh well. Pretty boring one. Hopefully they'll be able to make something else out of this besides just a flat increase to max health. But the rest of them don't seem all that fantastic. It doesn't seem like Necromancers have any sort of passive sustainability, like Wardens have the Bull Netch, Templars have their Rune Focus, Dragon Knights obviously have Battle Roar and Mountain, the Helping Hands. So it seems like Necromancers are kind of lost out a little bit on the passive sustain, at least as a tank. In Living Death, this has been described as the healing line for Necromancers. Reanimate, this is the one that we've all been looking forward to, bringing allies back from the brink of death, resurrecting up to 3 allies at the target location. The Morphs renewing animation, you restore 5,300 magic and stamina for each ally you resurrect. Animate Blast Bones, you consume up to 3 other corpses in the area and summon a Blast Bones for each corpse consumed. I'm assuming you still get to reanimate your friends this way. So this looks like it'll be really nice for 4-man content. Oh, your entire group just wiped? Oh, here you go. Here's reanimate. Everyone's alive again. Of course, it seems like he forgot to mention how much ultimate it costs. Obviously, you're not going to be able to like spam it, but I'm assuming this is going to cost at least 250 ultimate, just because resurrecting 3 people is quite a strong effect. So I'm guessing this will cost at least 250. I'm guessing like 300, 350 ultimate, maybe even more than that. The active abilities, Render Flesh. Sacrifice your own power to repair damaged flesh, healing you or an ally in front of you for 1232 health, but applying Minor Defile to yourself for 4 seconds, reducing your healing received and health recovery by 15%. A little bit of a cost-benefit analysis you got to make here. You won't be able to heal yourself quite as much if you are basically spamming this. Resistant Flesh, you grant this target spell and physical resistance equal to half the amount healed for 3 seconds. I guess that's pretty nice. Helps stack on top of existing resistance buff. Bereft Flesh consumes a corpse near you when cast to heal a second target. So you will need to consume a corpse to heal 2 other second target, but you will still get that Minor Defile. So this kind of reminds me of Healthy Offering on Nightblade healers, except instead of obviously harming yourself, you're reducing your own ability to heal yourself, which might not be a big deal for healers. So this looks like it might be kind of your burst heal. Expunge, embrace the power of death, removing up to 3 negative effects from yourself and restoring 30-90 magic or stamina over 5 seconds, whichever maximum is higher. It says here that there is no cost associated with it, so this might be like the Netch move for Wardens. Expunge and Vivify, you also restore 10-20 magic or stamina over 5 seconds, whichever maximum is lower. Expunge and Modify, you restore 10% more resources for each negative effect you remove. So actually, I take that back. It looks like Necromancer tanks do have a sustain ability here with Expunge. Now the question is, do you need to remove the negative effects in order to get the restoration here or not? It doesn't seem like, just from the wording, it doesn't seem like you need to. Also depends on the cost. Since restoring resources probably will not have a cost associated with it. Also acts as a purge for yourself, so really nice to be able to remove 3 negative effects from yourself. So it does seem like Necromancer tanks and Necromancer healers will both have a sustain move as well. And this might also be useful for DPS because of course you always want more sustain as well. I'm just thinking off the top of my head, there you might have space in the back bar to use Expunge. Maybe on a stamina DPS. I'm not exactly sure on a magic DPS. I'm going to say probably on a magic DPS as well, so you will be able to get some additional resources back even as a DPS. Life amid death. Release residual fragments of fallen souls at the target location, healing you and your allies for 821 health. Consumes a corpse cast to continue heal you and your ally in the area for 795 health over 5 seconds. So this seems like it is optional corpse consumption, and just based on this wording, it might seem like the other abilities that require a corpse, there might be some are required and some are not. I guess it would depend on the specific ability. Renewing Undeath consumes a corpse on cast immediately to remove up to 3 negative effects and continue to heal you and your allies in the area for 795 health, so it just adds in that kind of cleanse effect here if you consume a corpse. Enduring Undeath, consume a corpse on cast to continue to heal you and your allies, so same effect as the base. You can just consume up to 5 additional corpses on caps, with each corpse extending duration of the heal over time by 5 seconds. So this seems to be pretty interesting ability here, where you have your sort of AoE heal, and then if you happen to also consume a corpse, then you can get additional heal over time, and depending on the morph, either a longer heal over time or a kind of purge as well. So this seems like an interesting move to use here. Spirit Mender. Conjure a ghostly spirit to do your bidding and stay by your side for 16 seconds. The spirit heals you or the lowest health ally around you every 2 seconds, restoring 245 health. So interesting. This seems like a kind of healing Netch. Spirit Ward, while active, 10% of the damage you take is transferred to the spirit instead. So I'm not sure if the spirit has like its own health, or if it's basically invulnerable like a lot of summonable pets are. But Zaz has already said these are not quote-unquote permanent pets, so it might just be it does have health associated with it, and when it takes too much damage it dies, so might not want to necessarily use this, but it does reduce the damage you take, so maybe it's worth that trade-off there. Intensive Mender. The spirit heals you or the lowest health ally around you every 2 seconds, restoring 16 health. And the spirit heals for 3 times the amount, but lasts half as long. So you will get more healing out of it, but it will not last as long, so you have to cast it more often. Not sure if that's a good trade-off or not. I guess we'll have to wait and see just how much this heal actually is. So all these values are with no sort of... it's just kind of like the base tooltip that he's got on an Argonian. Restoring Tether. Siphon your last remnants of life from a corpse, healing for 2880 health over 12 seconds to you and all allies between you and the corpse. So that's interesting. So you have to place everybody between you and a corpse in order to heal them. So that's a sort of interesting mechanic there. Braided Tether. Each ally between you and the corpse increases the healing done by 5% up to maximum of 30%. Adjacent Tether. The closer you are to the corpse, the more healing is done. Up to a maximum of 30% more healing if you're right next to the corpse. Just based on the fact that you have to basically organize your group to be between like you and a corpse kind of makes me not want to run this. It doesn't sound like you have to stay between the corpse. It sounds like you just cast it and then they can move out between that path. But just the fact that they have to be between you and the corpse in the first place makes this ability that I probably will not run on a Necromancer healer at all. Passive abilities. Curative Curse. When you have negative effect on you, your healing done is increased by 8%. New Death Experience. While you have Living Death ability slotted, your critical strike chance with all healing abilities is increased by up to 20% in proportion to the severity of the target's wound. This seems like a pretty interesting mechanic here, so the more somebody is hurt, the more chance you have to critically heal them. Corpse consumption: when you use an ability on a corpse, you generate 10 ultimate. This effect can occur once every 16 seconds. This is nice for ultimate generation. And then Undead Confederate: while you have a Necromancer summon active, your magic and stamina recovery is increased by 300. So this is a flat increase compared to a percentage increase that we will see on other class passive effects. Now, just based on this and the sort of the path that they've taken with the racial passives, I would not be surprised if they changed all these percentage passives in existing classes to flat increases instead. So I'm anticipating maybe a couple of changes to the passive class abilities come Elsweyr PTS. So that is all of the Necromancer skill tree. So just on a cursory glance, it does seem like both Magicka and Stamina Necromancers do have class abilities they'll be able to use, so that's always a nice plus. And then in terms of support roles, this is tanks and healers. It does seem like you have some interesting tools to play around with. I'm particularly looking forward to playing as a Necromancer tank. Kind of want to see how that stands compared to like a Warden tank and a DK tank. The Necromancer healer, I know a couple of healers in Mayflower are interested in trying out Necromancer healing to kind of see how that plays around. Now, the fact that a lot of these abilities require a corpse to be used is kind of a bummer. That being said, a lot of the abilities that are used by Necromancers do create a corpse, so you should not be any shortages of corpse, but again, it'll depend on where Necromancers stand in terms of the meta for DPS. Depending on kind of where they fall, really will kind of dictate how many Necromancers you have in groups, how many corpses you're going to have in group. The reliance on the corpse might see that the Necromancers aren't going to see a lot of competitive play in PvE. Might see a lot of play in PvP though, because of course you have a lot of corpses in like large-scale Cyrodiil PvP. But just thinking from the PvE perspective, the sort of reliance on corpses for a couple of abilities, and some of these abilities seem like they're very strong or very key abilities you're going to want on your particular role, that might put a little bit of a damper on its overall effectiveness in a group PvE scenario. So 4-man content, 12-man content, that kind of stuff. So yeah, that's pretty much it for this video. I'm looking forward to playing out the Necromancer when Elsweyr hits the PTS in a few weeks. So be on the lookout for those videos. Hopefully I'll be able to put together a Necromancer DPS videos, Stamina and Magicka, and then tank and healers. So we'll have to wait and see for the PTS to kind of actually get actual gameplay out of me at least. And again, there will be links down in the description below to a couple of videos that were released by various people who were able to go to the London playtest or who are class reps that will be able to describe these abilities in pretty much the same amount of detail, maybe even more detail than I described here. So that's it for this video. Hope you guys found this informative, and hope you guys are also excited for the release of Elsweyr and the Necromancer as well. And I will see you guys in the next dungeon.